Okay, so picking up where we left off on this rig, we have our control, but then we also have our squash handle and our bend handle and our door. And those are just a lot of extra things to select. And animation's complicated. So we want to simplify this for the animator, which is you, as much as we can. And what I would really like to have happen is that the only thing we really need to animate is this one control. And that one control has everything on it that we need. So let's go ahead and do that. So when we look at these in the channel box, when we look at the channel box in this control, we see these different channels, right? More attributes: translate X, translate Y, translate Z. These are the default ones that come with it: translate, rotate, scale, and visibility. With pretty much any object you make, it has those. But that doesn't mean that that's the only one that it can have. As you remember from Winslow over here, he had some extras. So we're going to do that as well. We're going to add some extras to this control. So we're going to do that by going to Modify, and then Add Attribute. And it's going to pop up this extra window. And I want to start typing in the things that I want to have in here that I can control. So I want to control the door. And I can hit Add. And you see now I have the door. I want a squash control. Add that. I want to be able to bend it. I want to have a bend angle, which is how we twisted it around, right? And then I want a bend height. And I'll hit OK on that. And so we have those on there. So like I've made all of these magical new channels, but if I try to adjust them, nothing happens. That's because they're just values right now. Like Maya has no idea what this means. And we haven't told it. So that's fine. So I'll show you a couple of different ways that we can make these channels affect other things. So the simplest way is just being able to rotate an object, right, or translate an object. These values here, rotate Z, right? I can set this up to where this door slider controls the rotate Z on my door object. So the oldest, sort of simplest way of doing this, Windows General Editor, and it's called the Connection Editor. Now the Connection Editor works with like a really quick one-to-one connection. So I will select my controller first and hit Reload Left. And if I go down to the bottom here, you will see door right there, right? And you'll notice what we have here is our left, and then it has this from and to. So whatever is on my left will control whatever I have selected on my right. So if I choose the door and say reload right, what I can have happen, find my rotate. So I want my door to control rotate Z. So all I have to do is select door and rotate Z. And so you'll see now rotate Z has this yellowed out channel there. In fact, if I try to adjust it, I can't anymore, right? Because the thing that is now controlling that is my door attribute here. And so now that value will adjust my opening and closing of that door. And you'll see that if I go back and select that door, whatever number I have on my channel box here for door is the number that I'll have in my rotate Z. So that's a connection that we can do that way. And we can do this with our squash and stretch as well, right? I could select squash 1 and then reload right. But here's the problem. And this isn't a problem, but this is a confusion that a lot of people will have. Is I selected squash 1 handle. Well, squash 1 handle is where my translates and rotates and scales for that object is. But it's not where that factor is, or the squash and stretch part. That's actually under the squash 1 input. So factor is right there, and you'll notice if I look here, I'm not going to find factor. So I actually have to select the squash one handle here and then hit reload right to actually get factor. And so I can then connect squash to factor, and it should work. Let's go ahead and close this and just see how our controls are working. Our door is working good, and our squash is working good. Right. Now, a couple of things that I am kind of noticing on mine. I don't always want my squash to be able to do this, right? I don't need to squash negative 77.9. It'd be nice to have a little bit of a limitation in there so I don't break it as easily. And there's a way we can edit that. If I select my channel here, and I go to Modify, Edit Attributes, I should then be able to select my controls. Why is it not showing my attributes? It's because I don't have it selected. There we go. There we go. There they are. I had the wrong thing selected. And you'll see now with like squash, I have the ability to have a minimum and a maximum on this. So I can set my minimum and maximum to, let's say, negative 1.2 and 1.2. And then if I hit close, now when I scale this, it will stop at 1.2 and negative 1.2. And I can zero that back out to 0. So you can always set those limitations to kind of protect yourself from yourself. Now the cool thing about that is now that all that's connected, I don't even need to be able to see my squash handle anymore. So I can just hide that. I can either hit Control H, or I can turn off the visibility by tapping in 0 on my squash handle. And that's just one last thing I have to worry about in here. So the connection editor is really nice, but it's a one-to-one connection, and it can be a little confusing visually sometimes because the only indicator on whether it worked was whether it's highlighted or not. So we're going to do something a little more complicated, but a lot more flexible and useful. So we're going to go to Windows, and we're going to open up Node Editor. So the Node Editor is kind of like the Hypershade, except for everything. So you'll remember in our Hypershade how we were able to connect up materials. So we have a create material here, and if I graph that network, we have these things wired in. So my plywood out color was into those 3 different channels. So like it's just these connections. What is connected to what? Right. Well, this works the same way for a lot of other attributes. So I can select my control and hit this little plus button. Now, if you have a bunch of stuff in here already, you can hit this to sort of clear it out. And I hit this little plus, not this plus, but this one right here. And you'll see now I have my ship control. I also have my ship control shape. I don't really need it as much, so I can hit the minus to take it out. And I can click these 3 buttons to expand it all the way out, and you'll see that I have all of my incoming paths on this side. If I wanted something to control the translates, I could wire it into here. And I have all my outgoing on this other side. So incoming is on the left, outgoing is on the right. And you'll actually be able to see, if I were to graph this network, you'd be able to see that my door is actually going out to the ship door mesh, and that my squash is going out to squash 1 mesh. But this is a little confusing. There's a whole bunch of extra nodes that you're probably like, what are all those about? Like, I don't really want to make it confusing, so let's just go back to what we had, add that in, and we are going to also add in our bend 1 handle. So we add there. And I want both the handle and the shape on this. I don't really need the shape on my control, so I can get rid of that. And I'm going to expand this out because this is my handle. So this is the thing that is translating and rotating. And this is the thing that has the curvature, high bound, and low bound, right? So what I know I need is I need bend to drive curvature. So all I have to do is find bend, and find the outgoing channel of bend and just plug that into curvature. And so now what I should have is the ability to adjust bend here, and it adjusts the bend on this handle, the curvature on the handle. This is literally the same thing that was happening in the connection editor. It's just a more visual way of seeing it. I connected bend to curvature. And it's a little bit more powerful because there are other things I might want to do. So for example, like I also want my bend to control the rotate Y on my bend handle. Because you remember, I wanted to be able to rotate this around like this, right? And so I could take bend height, so more invisible so you can see it. I take bend height, bend angle, and oh goodness. And I want to map bend angle into rotate Y. And so now I should be able to adjust bend angle and it will twist. So here's the problem though. I also want my bend height to control the height of my my bend control deformer. And so right now, my bend handles translate Y is 4.661. And that's how it's able to be at the middle of this object. Well, the problem is if I were to map bend height straight into translate Y, it's going to replace it with what is at bend height, which is 0. So you'll see that if I do that, if I take bend height and put that into translate Y, it puts my locator down at 0, because that's what was on my ship control. And that's not bad necessarily. I mean, I can always go in here and bring my bend height back up if I needed to, right? But 4.661 was where it is by default. Right? And so I undid that. I broke that bend height by hitting Control Z, right? And this 4.661 is a number that I would just like to add to my 0, right? I would like this bend height to be whatever number I put in here plus 4.661, right? And so there's a lot of math nodes that we can add to do that. So that's what this add button here is for, this is how we can find all of the ones we want. And what I'm going to look for is just add, right? And you'll see I get this add matrix. That's not really what I want, right? So just letting you know, when you type what you want, that's not always what you're what you're going to get, right? Because what I really want is a sum, right? Which could be an add, subtract, and average, right? So let's try sum, and we get sum. There's another version that would work that we could use called plus minus average, right? But I'm just gonna use this simple sum one. And if I click that, it'll bring it out here, right? And so the what I want is I want the number going in to translate Y to be my bend height plus 4.661. So if I take bend height and I map this into input 0, right? Then we get this, right? And then I can take the output of that and pipe that into, let me see, output of input 1. Oops, does that not work? Output. Yeah, there we go. I don't know why that wasn't working. Into translate Y. So if grabbing here by output and plugging in, well, now it's working. I don't know why it wasn't working before. If that wasn't working before, the other thing you can do is click this big white button here and choose output and then plug that into translate Y. And so again, it messes it up because the only number it's putting into it is the 0 from bend height. So it's going 0 from bend height into here. So its output is 0. What I'm needing is something to add to that. So right now it's 0 plus 0 is 0, right? 1 plus nothing is 1. So right now it's adding it to nothing. And so I need something else in here. And what I need for that is just a solid number, just a number I can type in. Now, some of these nodes will let you actually type something in. This is not one of them. And so what I'm going to look for is an equal node. That's it. And this equal node is basically just a way of saying I'm going to type a number in, and the output will be that number. So it's a way of like having a value I can adjust, right? And so let me try to adjust this so you can see it a little bit better. On here. So on my equal, on input 1, I'm going to type 4.661. And on my output 1, I'm going to plug that into the input 1 of the sum. And so now what I get is the 0 from bend height plus 4.661 equals the number that is going into here, which is 4.661. Right. And that gives us the value we need in our bend handle, which is 4.661. Now again, this part's probably optional. Like it would still work without it, but this allows me to always have 0 be my default for 0 be my default, and still be able to have my bending from the center. Right? Last thing I'm going to do is go ahead and hide my bend handle, because that's not even anything I need anymore. Type 0 for that. And I want to be able to just drag, select, and get the things that I want. But you'll see that if I did that now, all right, I'm going to animate my ship, I'm going to drag, select it, I'm getting this. And it's because I'm moving not only the control, I'm also moving the individual objects as well at the same time. And so I really just want to prevent myself from accidentally selecting these individual objects. So on the ship group, I'm going to select just ship group, and I'm going to create a new layer. And I will call this ship layer. And since I use this button here, this creates a new layer with the objects I have selected in it. And so now all of my ship is something I can turn on and off. And I can also click this button to set it to template mode, so I can just sort of see an echo of it, or click it again, which means I can see it as it is, I just can't select it. So that means now whenever I need to animate my ship, if I just drag and select, I'm only going to select my controls. And this should give me the option now with a single object to start animating this. So I can hit S, and I set a control on everything, and then I can squash it. Oh, let's go here like 5. I can squash it, hit S, I can stretch it, hit S, and then I can still animate everything together. And so now everything is kind of being animated on the same object, and I have full control of what I want this ship to do. So I'm gonna do a much prettier version of this animation later, but just showing you why we have it set up like that. Right click, delete those keys, and I think that we're about ready to start animating everything now.